Hey everyone, this is Helena, and I'm so excited to be talking with Valerie Greene today. Valerie is a love and relationship coach who helps women attract and maintain lasting love in their lives. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is how to bring a man closer and draw him in with your feelings rather than push him away. And this is something I get asked about all the time, so hopefully this will be really helpful for you no matter where you're at in your love life. So welcome, Valerie. Thank you so much for being here.
Yay, it's so nice to be here, Helena. Thanks for having me on the show. I can't wait to talk about how to share your feelings in a way that draws a man closer, because this is one of my favorite things to talk about too.
All right, so let's just jump right in. The first thing I wanted to mention here is that I found it's kind of a common misconception that men hate our feelings and they don't like emotions. Is this something you hear as well? And I'd like
Totally.
to shed some light on this a little bit.
Exactly. And it is a common misconception. And what I like to teach people is it's both the intention that you have behind sharing your feelings, and it's the way you share your feelings that pushes a man away. It's not the feelings themselves, if that makes sense. So I'd love to delve right into that.
That makes perfect sense. Yes, I love that. I've actually never heard anyone put it that way before. It's the intention behind it or the way you share it, not the actual emotion itself, right? Okay, so can you give us some examples of how our emotions might push a man away? How we might share an emotion in a way that makes a man want to back off or withdraw or shut down?
Definitely. Yeah. And look, I'm guilty of this too. I mean, even last week, my partner and I got in an argument because he showed up late to an event that I was leading. And the first thing that I did was make him wrong and say, even if I shared my feelings, I was like, I feel let down because you were supposed to be here earlier. And so the first thing he did was get defensive. What do you mean? I didn't know it was important that I was here earlier. And then we get into an argument. How could you not know that it was important? And right away, we're arguing, and we felt less connected, and he felt pushed away, and wasn't inspired to show up at the event, right? So it's like we do this all the time. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, and I teach this stuff. So I just want to start out by being vulnerable and saying, it's our first instinct when we share our feelings, even if we're not saying, even if I had just said, I feel let down.
Yes.
That's immediately making him wrong.
I love
and he's
that.
going to get defensive.
Absolutely. And I'm totally cracking up over here because, yeah, I mean, I gave up trying to be perfect with this stuff a long time ago. You'd probably be shocked. Some of the things that come out of my mouth sometimes is just we're not going to be perfect with this. So it's not about walking on eggshells or beating yourself up if you make this mistake. But what I'm hearing you say is if you make a man wrong or blame a man or hold him responsible for your feelings, he immediately wants to shut down or get defensive or sometimes attack back, whatever, depending on the kind of man he is, right? So what would you advise a woman? And I totally understand the tendency to men disappoint us. Our men disappoint us all the time, right? They're late. They, leave their shoes in the doorway. They do all that, right? So
yeah, people, it's just human nature for us.
Yeah.
Anytime we have expectations, we're going to be disappointed. It's just
I see it in clients too. They'll email me or we'll be on the phone together, and it's this long list of everything that a man is not doing right, everything she wishes he would be doing better or a different way. So do you have any tips for women in that situation? What would be a better way to share that feeling? Or if you can come up with some other examples, I'm sure that would be helpful too.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, another example of how we share our feelings in a way that pushes men away is if we're telling them what to do with our feelings. And that can be just in the intention. Even if I say, even if I'm not telling him what to do, and I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to tell a man what to do, but I'm just going to share, I'm angry. But if in your mannerisms and your tone of voice, what you're intending to do with your anger is to tell him that what he did was wrong and you want him to do something different, he can feel it, Yes. And so then he's going to be feeling made wrong. And I just want to go a little bit into why that's so important, because obviously women don't like to be made wrong too. I don't like to overgeneralize, But men and women generally have different core vulnerabilities. I don't know if you like to talk about that too, but just the way that testosterone and estrogen affects us differently. Men are wired to want to succeed at things. And so their core vulnerability is to feel like they're failing. And if they feel like they're failing, then it's like they close off. They don't want to hear anymore. And then he can't hear anything that you're saying, whereas women, yeah. And whereas women, like, we don't like to fail either, right? Like, obviously, like, we have more commonalities than differences, of course, but our core vulnerabilities are usually that we're not loved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I've talked about this in different ways before. So I love getting your perspective. It's so like unique. I love just getting all these different, I 100% agree with you. We tend to have this filter of like, do I feel loved or do I not feel loved? Men have a different filter. It could be like, am I winning or am I losing? One thing I always say is that men gravitate towards people and situations that make them feel appreciated, and they tend to avoid situations that make them feel incompetent. Exactly. And one thing I've found is that men can tend to take everything as like a correction or criticism, like they did something wrong. And that really speaks to your point of what you were just saying, which was totally brilliant. What are some ways we can share our feelings with a man where that doesn't trigger that activity in them?
Totally. And this is something that my partner really illuminated for me too, is that like men need context when we're going to share our feelings. Is like just saying like, I'm angry, meaning I'm making you wrong. There's no context. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, how can I fix the problem? Or if I don't think I can fix the problem, then I'm just going to feel made wrong and shy away. Like, there's nothing that he knows what to do with it. Like, men need something to do. And so what I mean by context, and this is what I want to take a step back and talk about, like, remember I said in the beginning that it's either our intention or the way we share our feelings that pushes men away. So it's really important that we're coming from an intention when we're sharing our feelings of collaboration. So what that means is, instead of trying to change him with our feelings, meaning if our intention is I'm right and you're wrong, he's going to feel that. And he's going to feel controlled and mothered and managed, and that's going to push him away. So it requires us to make this internal shift, which, we're not always able to do in the moment, but this is what I help my clients to do, is to make an internal shift of my needs are important and his needs are important. So the purpose of me sharing my feelings is to create a solution together. Like, that's the purpose. And so if we're coming from that intention, then we can set some context. And what I mean by context is approaching him and saying, hey, I'm really upset and I want to talk about it so that we can work it out. So like immediately he's going to be like, oh, you want to work it out? You trust me to work it out. Okay, I want to hear what's going on so we can solve the problem.
I love that. It's almost, I imagine it's like you and him standing, facing the same way, facing the problem together rather than on opposing sides, just trying to like push and shove each other into getting your needs met. And I love it. To me, from my perspective, it feels like inviting a man to step into his masculine energy. When you're expressing your feelings, that's a feminine energy thing to do. And then what can we do to solve this? What can we do to work this out so we both feel good is an invitation for him to help solve the problem. And I know from experience, men are much more likely to want to work on something if it was like their idea, not just something you're telling him to do and he feels obligated, right? He might do it for a little while, but eventually he might just slip right back into whatever he was doing before. So I love that. So we talked about some ways that make a man wrong, some mistakes, common mistakes that we can tend to do when it comes to sharing our feelings. I would love to hear like the right way to do it, or anything you have to say on that.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing that I said is sharing the context. So I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. Context is super important for men. They need to know what's the purpose of this. Like, men's orientation is towards purpose. Like, what's the point? And so it's really important when we're sharing our feelings to tell him what the point is. Like, do you want to share your feelings so that you can solve a problem? So tell him that, like, I want to share my feelings so we can solve a problem, and then he'll be listening for what's the problem and how can we solve it. And then he'll exactly step into his masculine and be your hero and want to win with you. But if you just say like, hey, I'm really upset about this, then he's going to see it as complaining and you being negative. But if you set the context first and you're like, look, I'm going to complain because I don't know of the solution, but I know that like you can help me figure it out, then all of a sudden he is empowered and he feels like you want him to be your hero. So that's the first possibility of a context.
That is so great. I just have to jump in and tell you how brilliant that is. And yeah, especially masculine energy men are like addicted to fixing things and solving problems, or they approach conversations where what's the point? What's the problem? Mm-hmm. So it like gives them something to do rather than, oh my gosh, she wants me to listen to her. How long is this going to go on for? So now it's like you already have that buy-in from him. That is so, so brilliant. So yes, keep going. What's the next step?
Exactly. And so, I mean, I want to give another example of context because sometimes you just want him to listen to your feelings because you want to feel heard, and you don't want him to solve a problem. So it's important to set him up for that too. It's important to say, you know what, I had a really bad day. It would really help me feel better if you listen to me. Do you have time to listen to me? I don't want you to solve the problem or give me advice, but it's important to let him know what the point is there too. Like when I share this, and you just listen, I'm going to feel so much more connected to you and I'm going to feel so much better, so like you're sharing with him the positive feelings that you're going to get out of it. So he knows that he's providing that. So then that's the context.
So great. I love that. Maybe I was talking to a male coach once, we were doing an interview like this, and he said, that his partner, something that she did that was really helpful is give him a time frame. Like, I'm just going to need you to listen to me for 10 minutes, right? So if he's doing something, it's not like, all right, I'm going to be distracted from my work for who knows how long, right? I love that in terms of setting a context. That is so great. So then how would she go about actually sharing her feelings with him next?
Yeah, exactly. So now we get to the how-to. So the thing is, and I'll tell you more when I tell you my free gift, I have 5 steps, a 5-step process called Manifest Lasting Love conversation. And then I really go into detail about like each one of the steps when you're sharing something that is a problem, for how not to make him wrong and how to inspire him to step up and want to meet your needs and desires. So I'll go over as much as I can with it during this interview. And then if people want like a written out process, we can talk about that at the end because I have lots of tips. So the next thing is to understand, I mean, first of all, let's take a step back. It's important to ask him, is this a good time? Because men are very single focused. So if you're interrupting him and he's in the middle of, even if he's just in the middle of watching TV or he's in the middle of zoning out on the couch and we interrupt him with our feelings, we're like, what? Is zoning out on the couch more important than listening to me? He doesn't care about listening to me. But it's important to understand that men are single focused. And when he's zoning out on the couch, it's actually, he's recharging from the last thing that he did. So he needs to make the mental space to be able to listen to you. So it's important to ask him, is this a good time? If not, when's a good time? And, wait till we can have his full attention. Because that's a misunderstanding I see going on all the time where women try to share their feelings when he's in the middle of something else. And then he gets really dismissive. And then we think he doesn't care. And then we get mad at him. And then, of course, he feels misunderstood. And, then you're in an argument.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm totally laughing over here this whole time because I have so experienced this. Yeah. It's funny. I just got done recording a video about how men are single focused. And we think like, what's the big deal? Can he listen to me for 5 minutes? But for men, and I think it's a physiological thing, like their corpus callosum in their, the part that, and correct me if you probably know more about this than I do, but the part that separates the 2 hemispheres for women, it's like spongier and we can multitask very well. And for men, it's actually denser and so it makes them more single focused, right? That's why they might not text back for a few hours because they're busy with something. And we're like, wondering why they haven't texted back, right? Like how
exactly.
Send a text in 5 seconds, right? But they're more single focused. So I love what you said. And when they're in relaxation mode or they're just chilling out, they're recharging from something else. And sometimes listening to something that has emotional charge, it's like it takes a lot of energy for them. I've found personally, I don't know if that's, have you found that in clients? So it's like something they have to almost gear up for sometimes, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It takes them a while to shift gears,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Yes.
It's like they're on a train track and they have to like actually shift to a new track in their brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So then what's the
So
next
that's,
here?
yeah, exactly. So the next step is to really take, and this is, where a lot of people have challenges. It's to really take some time before you're going to share it, to make sure that you're sharing from a vulnerable place rather than an attacking place, because usually it takes us time to switch gears because the voice in our head is wanting to make him wrong and tell him what to do. So it's important that we know how to translate that into our feelings and our desires. And so that's I help women to do, because that's like, we could spend a whole 30 minutes just talking about what that means to translate the judgmental voice in our head to our feelings and our desires. Because it does take practice.
I totally agree. Can you give us a quick example or a couple different examples of some, like a way to share your feelings just very concisely that doesn't have
Totally.
that judgment or expectation attached to it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example that I used recently, actually, because my partner will travel sometimes for work, and so there was a time a few months ago where he traveled and he didn't have any time for me, and he said he would, and he didn't. So I was feeling really lonely and let down, and like I really, the voice in my head was saying, well, he said he'd make time for me and he's not making time for me, so I'm obviously not as important to him as I thought that I thought I was, blah blah blah. So it was important for me to translate that voice into feelings and needs. And so let down is actually not a feeling, it's a judgment. I mean, that's getting to the nitty gritty of it, but I was feeling lonely, I was feeling disappointed, I was feeling longing, and the longing was for more collaboration. It was for, because usually like we organize our lives together. Like I was needing his input to make certain decisions we usually make together. And I was longing for more connection. And so instead of getting him on the phone when he was on the phone and saying, you said you would talk to me and you didn't, and I must not be important, because that's the judgmental voice. Instead, I could just share my feelings, which were, I was feeling lonely, I was feeling disappointed, and the impact of that, like I can take care of myself, right? But that's also how I was feeling. So it's not putting it on him that he needs to meet my needs. It's more like saying, I just feel disappointed. I feel lonely, and I can take care of myself. I can meet my own needs. I was talking to my girlfriends. I was, writing my book. Like I can fill my time with things. That's important to communicate too, that you're not like being needy. You're expressing your needs, but you're not being needy. But at the same time, like I was really feeling disappointed that we didn't have this collaboration, and what could we do differently next time to make sure that even if he doesn't have time to, like even if he says he has time and he doesn't, what can we do differently next time so that I feel like we have this collaboration and I don't have to wait on these important decisions that we agree to make together every week. And he really thought about it. And, so notice how I asked him, like, how can we solve the problem? So I was sharing my feelings, I was sharing my needs, and then I asked him, how can we solve this together? And he came up with an idea. He was like, oh, you're right. Like, I do need to help you, because like we agree on how we're going to spend money each week, and like I need to buy things. And, he's like, oh, okay. So next time I go on the trip, we'll make sure to make these decisions beforehand. And I'll make sure that even if I don't have time to talk to you, that I can email you, or like I thought that if we were going to have only 5 minutes, that wouldn't be enough. But if we get all the logistical stuff taken care of over email, then when I call you for 5 minutes, we could just connect, and have that like deep emotional connection where he just shares his love for me and I share my love for him. And, we came up with that solution together. And so the next time he went on a trip, I mean, he was able to work it out the next time so that he could make time to talk to me every day. And we really did spend at least like 30 minutes to an hour every day connecting. And because I shared my feelings the last time without making him wrong, that he was motivated the next time to make sure that I was prioritized.
So amazing. Yeah. So you got a great response with that. That's really, really great. What would you say to someone where their man doesn't have an idea? So you say, what could we do to fix this? Or how could we work this out so this doesn't happen again? What if the man says, I don't know? Because I hear from a lot of clients. Now, of course, I have my own ideas, but I'd love to hear what you have to say when a man isn't sure how to fix it or come up with a solution.
Yeah. I mean, see, the way I look at it is that men don't like to be told what to do, but when they ask us for advice, then they want us to step up and give it. But I think it also depends on how we give the advice. And so if we're in the role of like being their mother, or we don't respect them or whatever, then they can feel it. But if he's like, I don't know, then I would ask, okay, well, do you want my suggestion? And if he says yes, like, then I can give it. But when I give it, I can say, well, here's what I think. What do you think? So I'm always like volleying it back to him. It's like, that's the collaboration. That's like where then I'm not just taking over and say, fine, you can't do it, I'll do it. Because that's not collaboration. That's,
yes, I love that. It leaves him in that respectful place. That's exactly what I talk about this in my ebook, Attract the Man You Want. It's like, well, I have some ideas. Would you like to hear them? And then you're leaving him in that place where he wants to keep negotiating. He wants to keep talking right now, or maybe another time would be better. And I love that, coming at it from a place where you're sharing your ideas. You're not telling him what to do or jumping into that like mothering mode or like teachering role where you're teaching him what a good husband or boyfriend should be doing. Men despise that, and nothing will push him away faster than that. So I love, love, love everything you're sharing. This is really, really valuable information. Valerie, would you mind recapping the steps we just went over, coming from, like asking him if it's a good time and all the way to the end, because this was so, so important. I'm sure everyone's out of this.
Yeah. And these are basically the 5 steps that I have written in the e-guide too. So it's super simple. Although there's one step beforehand, which is just to make sure that in your relationship, there's a context of appreciation, which I know that you definitely advocate as well. Because if you share only negative things or negative things more than positive things, then he is going to feel made wrong. So it's important to, in general, have a context for appreciation. But then there are going to be things that you want to talk about that are negative, right? So when you do talk about those negative things, it's important, number one, to create the context. To really, like, what's the point of you sharing your feelings? Like, to really let him know what you want from him when you're sharing your feelings and why you're sharing them. So I'm upset and I want to talk about my feelings so we can solve this problem as a context. And right away, he'll be enrolled if he has the time, so ask him if he has the time. So then the second thing is to be able to really take ownership for your feelings. So translate your judgments into feelings. So saying like, I feel like you don't care about me is not a feeling, it's a judgment. So that's something that I help my clients to do, is to really translate their judgments into feelings. And then underneath that, share what it is that your desire is. Because our feelings are always there because there's a desire not being met. And when you share your desire, it's really important to share what that desire provides for you and the positive feelings that you'll get when it is met. Because, this is something I know a lot of teachers say, and I love the way Alison Armstrong says it, that men don't do things just to do them. They do it for what it provides. So it's important, for example, for me to not just say like, I felt lonely because I needed collaboration. It's like, it's important for me to say, like, when I feel collaboration, then I really feel supported and I feel uplifted and I feel like I have the energy to get things done in my life. And when I don't have that collaboration, I can still make my life work, but it's just like, I'm missing that energy that we feel together. It's like two minds are greater than one. Like, I just feel so uplifted when I have that collaboration. So I'm not just sharing the need, I'm sharing what it provides for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's not about him and what he's doing or not doing. It's about you and what feels good and how you're going to feel when you get that. I just feel like, even from like a masculine energy man, wanting to be your hero and jump in and meet that need when you share it that way. So that is totally brilliant. Was that the end of the recap, or did you have anything else you wanted to share?
And then the last step is to volley it back to him and ask him what he thinks.
Got it.
Because, you know, as you probably teach, men don't usually like to be asked how they feel because it puts them on the spot. Because they're more single focused, they're usually more focused on their thoughts and their feelings. So it's like you share your feelings and your desires, what your desires provide for you, and then what does he think? And then, you know, he'll come up with solutions, and if he doesn't, then you'll collaborate. But it kind of starts that volleying back and forth so that hopefully you can create a solution.
Yeah, that's exactly what I teach. You sharing your feelings, asking what he thinks, or asking how we can fix this, or how can we work this out as a team. You're in your feminine, you're inviting him to step into his masculine. And that feels really good for a man. What results have you seen when a woman can really learn how to do this correctly? It brings him closer, right?
Totally. It brings them closer. It motivates them to step up. Like, I've worked with women where their husbands weren't doing anything, and all of a sudden, if they share their feelings in this way, they start to help out around the house. They start to give their wives more support. I've worked with single women where they were not realizing that they were making men wrong and telling them what to do subtly, where they couldn't make a relationship work more than for a few dates or a few months. And I shared this with them. And then all of a sudden they met quality men that wanted to commit to them and, you know, get engaged and get married and move the impossible to make that happen.
Yeah, it can really change everything. And this was so valuable. All of this, I would love to have you on again and talk some more about this if you're interested. For anyone watching, if you have questions or comments, type those into the comment section. Maybe we can record some more videos on this, because this was great. Like, everything you shared was so unique, so like step by step. I love that you just give concrete tools, exactly what to say. So this was awesome. We talked about your free gift a little bit. I'm going to post the link to that in the description right below this video so everyone can go check that out. Would you like to share anything about your free gift?
Yeah, I mean, basically, because I know this interview was more conversational, so I didn't outline each of the 5 steps. So that's what the e-guide does. It's called the Manifest Lasting Love e-guide. And I break everything down into the 5 steps for how to share your feelings in a way that draws a man closer. And I explain a little bit about why that's important, and I give an example, and I have a little template for people to fill out. So it makes it practical for people. And so you can follow the link at the bottom of this video.
Okay, perfect. And I'll include a link to your website as well. I know you have some really exciting stuff going on. You're about to start a podcast, which I was a part of one of those episodes, which was really, really fun. One of the most in-depth interviews I've ever done. So that was great. And this was so, so valuable. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of this. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope we can do this again soon.
You're welcome. Likewise. It was so much fun.